All right, we're back. I think we're live. If anybody comes in the chat, let me know that we're live. Let me know that you can hear me. We got Dr. Matthew Nagra joining at 9:30 to look at this new interview between Beal and Frederic Leroy. Got a few things to look at before then. Let me just double check we're all up and running. I see it on here twice. That's annoying. But okay, whatever. We're streaming, so good. All right, we got Dr. Matthew Nagra joining at 9:30 to go over Beal and Frederic Leroy. But we do a little bit of Fast Action Network before then, and I want to have a little look at this Avi conversation with the shrimp welfare person. I won't have time to watch that whole conversation, but I'd like to get a flavor of it. But let's do some emails first. Let's do some Fast Action Network. We're at action.thehumaneleague.org. Oh, I totally just clicked done on that without doing anything. Okay, well, whoops. Okay. Huh. Okay, this used to open up my algorithm. Okay, nice, it's working. Whoops. Hey, I've got my lo-fi on. Is that annoying? Good to see you, X-Trooping. I assume it's not copyright for stream. This is just, you know, lo-fi girl. Goodness me, okay. Okay, this basically isn't working at the moment. All right, you know what? Let's watch this.
Hello? Can't hear. Hello? 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 You're not miking up. Your mic is like lighting up, but you're not, like nothing's coming through.
Is this one working?
Oh, now it's working. Okay.
I'm using a different it might be kind of bad audio. It's like my camera.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really simple. Like when you present this case where, oh, like here's this project for this amount of money, you can save this amount of shrimp or whatever. You want to that in and of itself, I think effective altruists have been very misleading when they say that. And it's good enough to mislead a lot of lay people because they're going to assume like, oh, millions of shrimp. So that's like millions of creatures that are plausibly sentient, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's a good thing. It's like, okay, well, all right. Like, even if we assume that there's some non-trivial odds of sentience, which is questionable in shrimp, but let's just
Well, that's very interesting. Okay, I didn't know that was going to be a point of contention. So maybe shrimp are effectively non-sentient, Abby's saying. I don't know enough to disagree with that, but certainly it's not intuitive to me. That's not where I thought this was going to go, but I guess that's just an aside at the start here anyways. But let's see where it does go.
Say it's, I don't think it'll be 10%, by the way. I think it'll probably be closer to, probably less than 1%. But anyway.
Less than 1% chance that shrimp are sentient, Abby thinks. Okay, wow. That's way lower than I would have put it. I don't know anything about the science of shrimp sentience, but that's surprising to me.
Even if it's 10%. The real issue is that if they are sentient, it's wildly, like, I have no, it's hard for me to even.
Yeah, no, this is a YouTube video of a Discord screen recording, I guess.
Fathom the degree to which I wouldn't give a fuck about that degree of sentience. It's like, or to fathom the degree at which I would give a fuck about the sentience. It's like, really, I'm just trying to even picture what that would be like. And yeah, it's so what you want to do, what the effective altruist wants to do here is try and put into perspective the cost benefit.
Look, God, the Discord sounds are killing me. But this is going to be a tough listen.
Analysis for the things that people who care about sentient creatures value, and they really don't do that. So they're not going to say, they don't present an analysis where it's saying, okay, for this amount of dollars you can save this amount of shrimp, and assuming a 10% probability that a shrimp is sentient, and assuming that with using this correlate, the value of their sentience is translatable to this amount relative to chickens or pigs or cows, then it makes sense to invest in this. Like, that's just not what effective altruists are doing. Which it seems like effective altruists, like, that's their whole shtick. Their whole shtick is.
So is the argument that they're not adjusting for, like, degree of sentience and probability of sentience, and they're just kind of counting the number of animals? Because I think that's very fair. If so, you would want to have a bit more of a complex, equation going on there, right? I think also the thing with Shrimp Welfare Project, it's about stunning slaughter, isn't it? So it's also, I believe, about 20 minutes per shrimp affected as well. Perhaps it gets that.
To like find ways where they can do, find cost-effective ways of getting those sorts of goals done, but they're not doing that. So, and if you were to do that, I think it would be like a really silly project.
Well, I'm not entirely sure.
The audio on this video is just so bad. This must be what it looks like. Listen to one of my live streams. Eh?
Like.
Well, regardless of whether it would or wouldn't, like, you agree that's not what's being done. Like, certainly that's not what you did.
Sorry, I didn't use empirics or try to figure out like how.
No, it's not that you didn't use empirics. Like, you didn't even like present it as assumptions. Like, you didn't. You just said, like, hey, you could save this many, whatever, shrimp with this amount of money. Like,
yes,
that's what you did. You didn't do the other stuff, even like forgetting about bringing in empirics to it.
AY retrospectively being a hero in chat, they're asking him to kill the echo.
Oh yes, all right, fine. Well,
I will say, by the way, props to me because props to myself, because vegan 2.0 sheets where I have done, and I link this Google sheet in a lot of my videos, where I have done the estimates of the number of animals saved per dollar. Shrimp Welfare Project's estimate of 1,300 is in fact left out as an outlier. So we don't include that in. This is my estimate is a geometric mean of these estimates. which frankly, this could definitely be a little bit tighter. I think that some of these are, well, whatever, they vary, but the geometric mean is 4.4, and we exclude the Shrimp Welfare Project at 1300, and we also exclude farm kind estimates of their own impact fund, which was 184 animals per dollar. The highest that we include is 18 animals per dollar, and the lowest that I could find is 0.8 animals per dollar, which, by the way, we're still talking about a $1 to save the life of an animal. So even at the low end of this, I think it's very bloody good value. But yeah, this is all
Reason I have the
irrespective of what's happening here.
echo thing is because, like, when I do the echo cancellation thing, it kind of cucks my audio. In other words, it lets other people just completely talk over me, but that's fine. Echo cancellation. Okay, it's there. So, yeah, it's certainly not what you did. Like, you didn't do the effective altruism shtick, right? You didn't present the cost-benefit analysis with respect to their values. What you did was you just gave some figures, and without any clear indication why someone who cares about the effective altruist approach to optimize their, get the best bang for their buck for, saving sentient life forms with the degree of, with consideration of the degree of sentience that they care about. That's just not something that was done.
Okay, I think that's fair, but we can just adjust.
You haven't presented a case. You haven't presented a case why anyone should invest any money into the Shrimp Welfare Project.
Well, we can just adjust the values in that case, right? And I'm not.
No. You can adjust the. Hold on. You can adjust. Okay, so obviously you can. I'm not gonna. Do you think I'm going to disagree that you can adjust values? Like, you can just say here, put values in.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Like, I guess you wouldn't dispute that.
I feel like I'm lacking so much context for this conversation. I don't. Well, they're talking about what this person's originally posted, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds like the criticism is basically that there's no adjustment for either uncertainty about sentience or low probability of sentience, or, uncertainty about the presence of sentience or a low degree of sentience.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's not possible to just take numbers and put them in. Yeah, you can assume whatever numbers you want and put it in. All I'm pointing out is that you didn't even try to do that. Right? Like, you weren't even at the level of making up numbers. Now, I don't think you should make up numbers. Right? I think you should try to go to the literature and try to see what people who have done various adjustments have figured out. Hopefully not with the effective altruist community, because I've seen what the way they approach it, and it's even more kooky. But
this is really interesting. There's a whole rift or beef, is there, with Avi and the effective altruism community. That's really interesting. I mean, without knowing more about it, and perhaps we'll find out more here, effective altruism strikes me as one of these things which, I don't know. I want to say that it's, from my perspective, an obviously correct way to approach morality in general. But I'm sure there's all sorts of empirical disagreements within that. So I wonder if he's saying that he has some sort of empirical disagreement with how it's in fact done within effective altruism, or something more fundamental about the approach that he's sort of anti-effective altruist. Where's this going, eh?
Yeah. So that's the point. Like, the point is that should be your approach. Your approach should be to actually do the effective altruist approach should be to actually do what they say they're trying to do.
Yeah, I haven't looked that much into like the literature. What I've done is essentially like skimmed what people generally say about the issue, and then try to come up with a conclusion from there. And I'm pretty sure like most people do this with like most empirics, right? I guess like what I would have to like what would have to be done for me to be convinced that like the numbers are off, or that like
just to be clear, you're the one who was trying to convince someone else, right?
I don't think I came in with a specific what I came in with was like thoughts generally on.
Weren't you in a comment? Weren't you commenting back and forth with Ask Yourself?
Yeah.
YouTube?
On YouTube. That was I think a different issue and not on this.
Well, you mentioned the shrimp. You mentioned the shrimp thing in those comments. That issue you did. There you go. Yeah, okay. There's your comment.
So the shrimp welfare project. Yeah. I think like okay.
I think corporate campaigns and whatnot are currently saving hundreds of millions, namely shrimp welfare project corporate campaigns.
Yeah, hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions. And given that these charities are effective for saving dozens of sentient beings from torture per dollar, I think it's among the greatest moral imperatives that
dozens per dollar. That's higher than my estimate by quite a bit. Well, mine's 4.4 per dollar, as we've seen, right? I know that Shrimp Welfare Project has, well, from what I've seen, they have way higher estimates. I don't know where dozens per dollar is coming from.
Dozens of sentient beings from torture per dollar. I think it's among the greatest moral imperatives that we donate as much as practicable to these charities. Now, I think that's an insane claim to make. I think that's like absolutely bonkers. But to the point here, that's you making a claim.
I wonder what the disagreement there is. I mean, it's obviously hyperbolic. Like, there's lots of individual bits that you could zoom in on that statement as it's written. But I wonder if there's a disagreement with some sort of moral imperative towards donating to effective animal charities. I'd be interested to hear if there is.
Claim to someone else. That's not about you needing to be convinced. That's you trying to convince someone else. So it's not about what you need to be convinced. Thank God it's not about what an effective altruist needs to be convinced, because holy shit, convincing them is like pulling every fucking tooth out of the mouth.
Wow, okay. There's definitely some longer term beef in these communities that I don't know about. This is super interesting from my perspective. I did not know about this rift. I wonder about the history of this.
But yeah, the point is like you need to you're coming in to convince other people, right?
So I suppose, okay, if I could just put the positive case then.
Yeah.
I guess I would put it like this. The first thing is, can we agree that, like, for instance, the Shrimp Welfare Project does indeed like prevent like several thousand or several hundred shrimp from like dying of asphyxiation per dollar through like stunning campaigns? Or is that also under dispute?
Yeah, so I can grant that. I can grant that the effective altruist does that. I'm not sure whether that's actually a better way of going, by the way. I don't know if asphyxiation for shrimp is actually a more or less painful way of going than stunning. But
like a death by asphyxiation over the course of like 20 minutes?
Yeah, yes, correct. You can have death by asphyxiation. The time frame, you can have a time frame that's longer and less painful than a time frame that's shorter and more painful. In fact, if we know anything about if anything, the nociceptive indicators, they don't really have the sort of agonistic slow type pains that in those creatures. They have the sharp, quick pains. In fact, if anything, there may be a case to make that the stunning is more painful. Excuse me. No.
Oh, damn. That's super interesting. So that's like a physiological point that I definitely did not know. He's saying that the type of pain receptors that shrimp have is likely that they can feel the sharp pain of stunning, but can't feel the dull, prolonged pain of asphyxiation. Well, that's super relevant if true. And they mentioned the 20 minutes thing, so good to know I'm barking up the right tree with all that. It's also funny. I think there was some funny wording in there about preventing the death. If they're being stunned, presumably they are still dying of asphyxiation. They're just stunned. But
no, it's an inference. It's not saying that.
Okay.
Not saying it's an inference. No,
Right.
okay, we can make inferences about the type of pains organisms feel by the type of nociceptors they have, and their reactions, and their behavior. Okay, I'm not gonna make like don't assume like just in the general process like don't assume I'm gonna make like a level 0 noob mistake.
Okay.
Okay, like I've been around the block here. I'm not making level 0 noob mistakes. So, if anything. The point being is that if anything, all the indicators that we have suggest that it's the opposite. That if anything, maybe asphyxiation, there may be a plausible case to make that asphyxiation is actually less painful than stunning. In which the effective altruism campaign here, the Shrimp Welfare Project, might actually be, you might be donating your money to be like torturing these shrimp more than they would otherwise.
I didn't hear. Yeah, that's a crazy consideration.
It's a crazy consideration.
Well, no, not a. Sorry. In the colloquial
it's so confrontational, man. The other guy's trying to be so polite.
sense, in that like I haven't heard it before.
So it's out of left field. You're saying?
Yes.
Getting hit out of left field with something you didn't think was coming.
Yeah, I was under the impression that was just like
Yeah, bien. I did not. I've not heard of this before.
the general consensus because I hadn't heard anything to the contrary.
Again, good thing that we do have our left out our outliers for our animals per dollar calculation, and also that throughout the Vegan 2.0 campaign, we give to a diverse bunch of charities. That's you diversify your donation portfolio such that you're not kind of what's the non-species putting all your eggs in one basket.
And it should be the general consensus for creatures that have type C nociceptive fibers, because because we have every indication in their behavior that they do actually seem to operate as if they have that sort of responses to those like agony type of pains, and asphyxiation might sort of cause that. But it's not very clear in the case of shrimp that that's actually a better way to go if you didn't have that sort of pain modality. And in fact, if the only sort of pain modality you have is that sharp, quick sort of stabbing, nagging pain, stunning does generate those sort of responses. And so it seems like you might just be activating the only type of pain the shrimp can feel, or the only modality of pain the shrimp can feel, whereas there was another way of going that the shrimp can't feel, or feels less. So it's not really clear that you're actually helping much of anything. You might be making the situation far worse. You might be just paying for a torture chamber.
That's fair. I suppose the question is then why wouldn't like a shrimp evolve the capacity or like to feel pain if they were suffocating? It seems like
because it's pain on suffocation is a different.
That's an interesting response. That's a good question, to be fair. Why wouldn't they have the ability to feel the pain of suffocation? Surely that would be adaptive.
Type of pain, because look, so there's different. It's like asking, why does this colorblind person not why do dogs not have like three cone receptors? I don't fucking know. It's like different creatures have different pain modalities. They may just shrimp I'm
not sure that's quite a fair analogy. Surely there's more reason to think this is going to be adaptive to know if you're about to suffocate.
Asking evolutionary, shrimp asphyxiation just might not be a common concern evolutionary for them to develop pain to that. Like who the fuck knows? But the point being is that it's certainly not clear. And even if they do feel some sort of pain, it's not clear that it's less pain than the type of nociceptive fibers they're saturated with, which would be all activated with the stunning. Just because it's a lower time frame doesn't mean it's not going to be more intense.
Well, it's like we take the argument the other way then, and we suppose it is more likely than not that like the shrimp welfare project is actually causing immense amounts of pain to shrimp. Wouldn't it be a similar because now like I previously did donate a good amount of money to the shrimp welfare project, and presumably it was causing thousands of shrimp to be tortured under your view.
Well, I'm not taking a strong view.
Not a strong view, but
yeah. It's plausible. It's plausible. Like I generally, because of the whole shrimp thing, I don't think you're like a bad and evil person for doing this, because I don't really care that much about the shrimp sentience either way. But yeah. So you could it could very well be the case that you.
Damn, there's a really interesting conversation. So the one guy's pretty much like, well, if that's the case, I guess I'll change my mind right now. Which, fair play, you don't really ever see that happen. I mean, yeah, well, that was clearly, that was a surprising empirical take from his perspective and from my perspective. But yeah, you really never see somebody in a debate, maybe he's not really considering this a debate, have that level of adaptability to new information. Fair play to the guy. And then the interesting follow-up then, Avi says, well, I don't care that much either way, because I think if they are sentient, they're not sentient to any meaningful degree or something like that. Damn. Okay. Yeah. Super. I'm enjoying this conversation. Oh, bugger! I just wound back in it majorly. Well done.
So,
shrimp to be tortured under your view.
Well, I'm not taking a strong view.
Not a strong view, but
yeah. It's plausible. It's plausible. Like
that was a pretty bang on. I just went back there straight like that.
I generally, because of the whole shrimp thing, I don't think you're like a bad and evil person for doing this, because I don't really care that much about the shrimp sentience either way. But yeah. So you could it could very well be the case that you have donated a lot of money to something. Yes.
But it seems still the case to me that this is a major moral concern then, because if there's like all.
Well, no, I was just very clear. There's other reasons why. No. When I say torture, I think that's it's an incredibly low probability that you're torturing them in the sense that I would care about. So there's other reasons. Okay, there's multiple different layers of criticism here. So one layer of criticism is that even granting everything else, like you could be torturing the shrimp. The other layer of criticism is that we're not granting everything else. Like there's other reasons to think like it's not a moral concern either way.
Yeah,
so it's a multi-tiered thing. It's like, okay, you haven't really shown that this is a real moral concern. Number two, even if it is a moral concern, you might just be on the wrong side of history here.
Wait, I don't think I missed anything, Paul. Now I was messing around on YouTube, but I think they were just saying the same thing again.
Yeah, in which case I would retort and say that it is still among the greatest moral imperatives that that we donate as much as possible.
Wait, that's compatible with what I just said. Yes, if it's a moral imperative, it's a moral imperative. Tautology, very good, excellent. Pat on the back for the tautology. But I haven't granted that it is, of course.
I wasn't trying to make that point. My point.
No, but it's a trivial point. It's like it's not gonna. Yeah, you could say, well, if we grant everything, suggesting that it's a moral imperative, then I would say it's a moral imperative.
No. I'm not saying that you grant that much. I'm just saying that you grant. There are a lot of people who are donating a lot of money to this project, which plausibly either in one case saves a bunch of shrimp from not being suffocated, or in the other case is causing a bunch of torture onto these shrimp.
Or in the other case does nothing except for waste money. Or just waste a bunch of money, to do nothing.
In which case, it would still be a really large concern.
So in that sense, so I'm not saying. So wait. So just to be clear, my claim is not that the shrimp welfare project is not a moral consideration.
What's kind of interesting about this as well is that presumably one of the big appeals for shrimp welfare project in particular is this idea that we've sort of discovered a relatively neglected area, and therefore one where, as another individual can have a high amount of impact, and it's kind of intuitive that this would be neglected, because it's intuitive that a lot of people wouldn't care about shrimp necessarily. And that very much appeals to the effective altruist, certainly in me, right? Where you have kind of, I don't know, it's clear how it would be undervalued, or it sort of fits with the theory of what you would expect effective altruism to come out with. Yeah, I will say as well, I don't know who this other person is. I don't know if they're involved with the charity or what, so I don't know if they're, I'm sure that people at Shrimp Welfare Project have considered this, or perhaps not. But yeah, I don't know who the other person is. I don't know if there is a more robust defense that someone at Shrimp Welfare Project might give.
In any sense. Like, it could be a moral consideration in the sense that everyone's wasting money when it could be used for other purposes, which is, by the way, is what I came in with.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, yeah, opportunity cost. Now, presumably, Avi has in mind that the other thing that you would be spending your money on is some other cause to reduce suffering or reduce rights violations, or however you want to frame it. In which case, he might still be on board with effective giving as... so, yeah, I was saying at the start, I wonder if he's not on board with effective altruism in principle or kind of in practice based on the empirics, and it sounds like it's more the latter. But let's see.
And I think, like, in any of those cases, it would be, like, still...
Hey, UF, how's it going? Nice to see you.
A really big imperative to, like, maybe, like, spread the word or talk about it, or to...
okay, but that's very different than what... Okay, wait. But that's... You realize that just the claim of, hey, maybe we should talk about this.
Yeah, we've got Matthew Nagra joining shortly, and we're going to go over Beal and Frederic Leroy, so I'm looking forward to that. They'll be kicking off shortly. I know we're a little bit late on that.
Is a very different claim than what you came in with in that comment, right? Because you're claiming...
Spread the word or talk about it, or to...
okay, but that's very different than what... Okay, well, sense that everyone's wasting money when it could be...
Yeah. And I think, like, in any of those cases, it would be, like, still a really big imperative to, like, maybe, like, spread the word or talk about it, or to...
okay, but that's very different than what... Okay, wait. But that's... You realize that just the claim of, hey, maybe we should talk about this is a very different claim than what you came in with in that comment, right?
Well, yeah, I think he's already done a concession and pivot in this conversation. I don't think he's gonna... Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I suppose I'll fall back on the second point then. There exists corporate...
Because when you said moral imperative, your claim here was... You didn't just say this is a moral imperative to talk about.
I guess he's now just on... There's... Well, I mean, you could say to research it, right? If there is, like, a decent degree of certainty about whether this is either really, really good or really, really bad or zero, it seems like it behooves us to work out which one it is.
Her claim was, I think it's among the greatest moral imperatives that we donate as much as practicable to these charities.
Right. So I have a second point to fall back on, which is not talking about the Shrimp Welfare Project then, conceding all of that.
Oh, these charities. Yeah, well, there we go. Based diversified donor here.
Presumably the welfare of chickens still matters.
Well, wait, but you did mention the Shrimp Welfare Project in that comment.
I mentioned it in conjunction with the...
Yeah, wait, but then in conjunction... Yeah, but then if it's a conjunction... yeah, but then that's the misleading part I would be talking about. Like, you can say, like, okay, it's very important to throw your money out of the window and donate to a worthy cause. Like, if that's my claim. You agree that's, like, really fucking silly, right?
Okay, interesting. So I don't think... yeah, Avi sounds like he's on board with giving to effective charities if they are in fact effective and achieving, positive outcomes, reducing suffering, whatever you want to say.
I should just amend that and say donate it to a worthy cause, not make a conjunction with throwing it out the window and donating it to a worthy cause.
Up until this point, I had not realized that, the thing about the type C nociceptors, and I'll definitely look into that. and also, if I
Hey, Oppenheimer. Yeah, I guess they have not posted any studies or sort of asked to. I mean, I don't know how much people do that live on a Discord debate.
knew about that sooner, I probably would not have donated as much to the Shrimp Welfare Project. Maybe I've diverted those funds elsewhere. Um, but in any case, I think like it's still like
Wait, so if
extremely.
all that's left, if all that's left is you think these are some issues that we should talk about, like animal welfare behavior.
Well, no. Also on the corporate campaigns for like chicken charities as well, right?
Hey, Matthew, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you? Is it going to be video or just audio? I wasn't sure.
I've just seen that you're here in video form, and I feel now maybe I would be remiss not to put you up.
No, it doesn't matter. I can turn off video. I just wasn't sure if we're like going live, if there's going to be video or not.
I don't know how I would. Yeah, let me work that out, because you look you dress in a nice shirt, you're looking good. I want to get you up. Also, I'm just looking at a recording of a Discord call on the screen at the moment. But we're gonna do this Ty, Beal, and Frederic Leroy thing. Hey, can I also do video here, or is it not gonna like that? We'll see. Yeah, I was in my OBS already using my camera. So, anyways, apparently there's a watch together feature that we can use here in Discord, so that we're both able to pause it,
Okay.
stuff like that. So let's work out how to do that. Activities. This is it. Watch together, YouTube. Here we go. Time to be up, Frederic, Leroy. The case for ethical omnivorism.
Welcome to the Ty.
All right, cool. Well, before we do that though, you are much more well known than I am, Matthew. So I appreciate you coming to join me and do this. And yeah, do you want? I think people will know who you are for the most part, people who are watching. But do you want to give a bit of intro to yourself and your background?
I can, yeah. So it's up to you. I'm whatever. I'm chill. Authorized. I'm just trying to see what the hell this says.
I know.
The watch
Sorry, we're
together.
both vaguely looking
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
widget here as well.
Oh, so now I'm hosting. I don't want to be hosting. What the fuck?
There you go. Now I think we need to put in. Oh, okay. I need to authorize my YouTube channel. Now we just put in the URL for this.
Are you doing that right now?
Yeah, let me bang that in.
Okay. Yeah, you do it. I don't know what the hell is happening on my side.
Welcome to the Ty
Oh.
Show.
How long is this thing? A fucking hour long of listening to these guys?
Yeah, we don't necessarily have to do the whole thing here.
My guest today is Dr. Frederic Leroy, a professor of food science and biotechnology at Free University.
I can't pause it on my end right now. I'm not sure.
Oh, Ty blocked me years ago on Twitter, by the way. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, you've had a little bit of history with both of these guys, right?
Yeah. Well, for Frederic, a little bit of think of back and forth in Twitter, but with Ty more so.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Freddie Leroy has blocked me on LinkedIn, which is my main stomping ground, if you could say it like that. But yeah, we've got. I had a little look at a summary of this conversation, and I think that you'll know most of the talking points already, basically. But yeah, there's a lot of people being eager to watch this. Hey, do you have some sort of video controls on your end? I'm not currently able to pause it.
Yeah.
I can mute it weirdly.
Oh, okay. So I paused it there. Yeah, I feel like maybe I started this, but I don't want to be in charge.
Okay, maybe if you leave the thing,
Leave activity. Okay, I left activity. Now I'll join your activity.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Now I'm pausing.
Okay.
All right. Sweet. We got that working. That was not too bad. Well, yeah. Okay. So you are blocked by Ty Beal on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm blocked by Freddie Leroy on LinkedIn. Do you have much? Have you done much with Freddie Leroy?
I'm familiar. He's the same as Ty. They're just like shills. I wonder. Freddie, I'm pretty sure he does get paid by industry, right?
He says that he doesn't, but he is on all sorts of boards. He's like very much in the industry.
So he gets paid. He gets paid. He just might not directly get paid for like the research he does or some stupid like hurdle or some reason that he doesn't have to report it.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if that's the case, where there's some sort of trickery basically where he's saying, oh, I'm not paid for this in particular. But yeah, certainly sits on like all the boards and is very much in the industry in that sense. So yeah. And then Ty Beal is with the Global Alliance. What is the name of the organization? The GAIN?
Yeah, something
Global
like
Alliance for
that.
Improved Nutrition. Which I've always had like a bit of a question mark about Ty Beal. I have seen signs of good faith from him. For me, Freddie Leroy is like the biggest villain here, but I'm not committed to that. I haven't seen really that much of Ty Beal, so yeah, I'm interested to hear the conversation anyway. He's been doing this podcast for a little while, so there's a bunch of these. All right, well, let's kick off and basically shout where you want me to pause.
Okay.
And I'll pause if I have something to say as well. But yeah.
And wait, is this going live or is it recorded? I can't remember.
Yeah, we're live. We're live right now. Sorry, I should have said that at the start.
Oh, we're live right now.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
Right now, yeah. So yeah, let's get into it. Hey.
Welcome to the Ty Beal Show, where we discuss food, science, and life. I'm Ty Beal, a scientist at the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, or GAIN. My guest today is Dr. Frederic Leroy, a professor of food science and biotechnology at Free University of Brussels. Dr. Leroy has published over 180 articles in scientific journals, which have been cited over 18,000 times. In our conversation, we discuss the risks of vegan diets, the unique nutritional and societal roles of meat and animal source foods, the push toward sustainable diet, and the controversies surrounding the Eat Lancet report. We also talk about our collaboration on the nourishment table and how to find a flexible, evidence-based approach to healthy eating. A quick note before we start. This podcast is separate from my role at GAIN. Okay, let's dive in.
That's an interesting disclaimer that I noticed you put in there. He must have been told you're not to associate this stuff with our organization, mate.
Yeah. Oh, and just pausing for a sec. I saw when you paused, like I don't know if you're seeing it on your side, but on the right side, the one with Gil Carvalho. I spoke with Gil a bit, but I haven't watched his yet. But apparently, throughout, Ty is like asking about how to lower his ApoB and stuff like that, which I thought was interesting given his promotion of things like red meat and whatnot.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's another character I'm not familiar with.
Oh, Gil's excellent. Gil's amazing. I was actually shocked that he was on Ty's channel, but it seems like I think Ty recently started this channel, and I think he's just trying to get a whole bunch of people on to further, I guess, expand his reach.
Yeah, he has certainly had some people who we would recognize on. He spoke to Walter Willett as well. He's
I see Stu Phillips there.
Right. So yeah, and now Freddie Leroy, right? And now to Freddie Leroy.
Yeah.
Dr. Frederic Leroy, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
Hi, Ty.
So you're very passionate about getting the science right about meat and animal source foods, livestock. just as you are about getting the policies and messaging to the public, which you've really started to, I think, put a lot of time and energy into over the last several years. So how did you sort of transition from being, I believe, primarily a meat scientist, food scientist, into studying the nutritional, environmental, and societal role of meat and livestock?
Yeah, well, I'm not particularly a meat scientist as such. Meat scientists, they look at meat quality and how that relates to the animal feed, and so forth. And I'm a food scientist in general. I have worked on other things than animal source foods as well. But I was trained as a food engineer in a way, process technology, and then I did a master thesis on the purely nutritional topic of food security in Africa. But I just find the animal source foods very interesting as such for multiple reasons. And they were part of my case studies, things I was looking at specifically, but also because of the controversy and the polarization. I just find it very interesting.
I'm going to go ahead and stick it on 1.25, just talk quite slowly.
From almost anthropological point of view as well.
Yeah. I think it is fascinating. It's really quite pronounced how polarizing and how passionate people get on this topic.
Okay, I guess I can't change the speed, but there we go.
Oh, you can't? Let me try on my side. See. Oh yeah, weird. I can't either.
Right.
I click it and then it doesn't actually change. Okay,
Yeah.
guess not.
From all sides?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have any kind of hard time limits, by the way, of course, like, feel free to let me know if you need to duck out at any point. This is probably longer than we might have expected.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right.
So I think seeing that happen online and even among scientists, I think is really telling. Can we talk about this kind of, I guess, the one extreme, which is sort of this vegan diet, fully plant-based approach? You've done a quite bit of work on this, including some papers in the American Journal for Clinical Nutrition with Neil Bernard, who's a researcher who's, I believe, a vegan, very, very sort of prominent researcher, very passionate about plant-based diets. And it was this series called, Great Debates in Nutrition. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and that experience?
Well, I think it's a great format. I was contacted by David Ludwig, who was the acting editor. So he came up with the Great Debates initiative and asked me to defend animal source foods, and then Neil Bernard was supposed to take the opposite position, and it was a statement that was thrown at us, and the statement was something along the lines of animal source foods should be avoided by all population groups to reduce chronic disease. And we took the opposite positions. We had each a paper and then a rebuttal, and then a rebuttal to the rebuttal, then finally a consensus paper, which I think is great because you have the interaction. You also...
Interesting. Tybill posted this the other day on his LinkedIn. I commented a link to my website about how long has Frederic Leroy avoided chrisbryant.com. And Tybill said in the comments, well, I don't think Frederic's afraid of debate. He did debate with Neil Bernard. It sounds like they're actually talking about through a series of papers, right? They didn't have
yeah. No, and I've seen the papers. I actually had somebody, I can't remember if it was before one of them was published or after, but asked for like my input on one of them. I can't remember if it was Bernard or someone else, but it was the vegan debate. And it was against Freddie, so I'm assuming it was Bernard's paper, but this was a while ago. Anyways, I had a few problems with the way that this was done. For one, the prompt or the debate topic is, excluding animal products altogether, or whatever the framing was. And from a health perspective, I don't think you can make that argument that strongly. Like, certainly minimizing to a large degree, but I don't know that you can make an argument that like excluding 100% versus including a little bit of fish or fermented dairy or something is going to be a significant difference one way or another.
Very high bar for...
Yeah, exactly. So that's one problem. Then the other problem was that in the pro-animal papers that I went through, and there was a couple of them, they were pretty much all just this like nutrient density talk and largely studies done in impoverished nations where they have or malnutrition is prominent, and they have food supply issues and all that, and using that to sort of justify a broader inclusion of more animal foods in like Western populations. Like it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it was largely ignoring the health outcome data we have looking at like chronic diseases. So it was in this sort of debate setting where it's like, hey, you publish a paper, then I'll respond and publish a paper. There's so much selective responding that happens
Yes.
that not all of your points are going to get addressed. And that's my biggest problem with a lot of the text back and forth that I'll have in like Instagram comments or whatever. It's just because people will sort of pick and choose which points they want to respond to, whereas in a real-time debate, it's like, no, I asked you this question, can you reply to that? And you could sort of force them to address the specific statement.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, funny enough, I put out a video yesterday saying exactly this. And I was particularly animated yesterday because I had been having a LinkedIn comment debate, and I realized that these pro meat posters in my LinkedIn comments were just copy pasting the output from some AI, and they had not understood or perhaps even read what they were copy pasting. I had somebody comment, you have an absence of long-term randomized control trials relating to cardiometabolic outcomes. And I look at the person and it's like a rancher. I was like, did this person write this? I mean, no, I'm not trying to be condescending, but like this didn't seem to add up. And it's very much like, the ChatGPT style, the dashes. People talk about the dashes, which, funnily enough, that actually is a character that I genuinely do use quite a lot, but there we go.
Yeah.
And I just replied, you guys need to stop with the ChatGPT copy paste. And the person just admitted it and said, well, I didn't think it was really worth writing a file. I was like, brilliant. But you just feel stupid, right? Because it's, I can type in ChatGPT myself. I don't need you to do it. I don't need you to do it in a debate. But yeah, none of them wanted to have a conversation, right? Surprisingly. And so that's so super interesting then. Yeah, that's exactly as I thought. When this is the one debate that Beal cited as an example of Frederic Leroy doesn't run from debates, and it's a series of papers. So yeah, I don't know if he's ever done a live debate. I have not seen it if he has.
Try to find common ground. There wasn't much to be in that box, but okay. And then the points of difference. So you can really lay out very clearly what the differences are. It doesn't get diluted in the conversation. You really have to list them and then let the evidence speak. And then the nice thing is that the readers can make up their own mind after reading the papers.
I think I saw the consensus. There was one bullet and it said 2 + 2 = 4. Right? Wasn't that the? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. But it was interesting to see quite a bit of disagreement. But you have a chance to really explore the argument in detail, and not just in a conversation, right? It's actually rigorously going through and looking at the evidence and presenting your argument. So I found that really valuable. And I agree, for readers who truly want to know what does the evidence say, it's a really good format to see from two experts on different sides of an issue, right? So can we talk a little bit now about the risks of vegan diets, or we think about nutrients, health outcomes, any particular issues around life stages for vegan diets?
Yeah. Well, maybe the first thing I want to stress here is that, because sometimes I come across as an anti-vegan scientist, which is absolutely not the case. I'm
well,
yeah, I know, really. Only sometimes.
I agree. Maybe absolutely not the case. Was referring to the scientist part of that as opposed to the anti-vegan part of it.
I'm pretty libertarian when it comes to diets, and even beyond diets, let's say. So for me, freedom on the plate is very important. If a vegan diet works for you, then just, and you're happy with it, I will by no means try to interfere with this. So I want to have that clear. The reason why I'm taking these positions is because I think as an academic, it is my responsibility to make sure that we have the factual information and the evidence-based information out there. And it's just my responsibility to react to the points of view which I think are not sustained by the evidence.
Just on this point, I know I'm pausing quite a lot, but just on this point, I have a video on my channel called Frederic Leroy Says the Quiet Part Out Loud, And this is actually just some other video that is on YouTube of an interview that he's done. And he says that meat industry communication needs to come from academia. I thought, all right, okay, you're just gonna say that, hey? So it was very much, he's saying, I feel a responsibility as an academic to make sure that the truth is known and so on. And then he's at meat industry conferences saying, well, what we can do is have meat industry communications coming through academia. It's like, okay.
And then secondly, of course, as a citizen, I'm also worried about the fact that imposing vegan ways of eating upon certain population groups can be risky, and that's the answer to your question, I guess. So.
Oh, I was trying to pause. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so that's the other thing is like imposing it on certain population groups. That tells me that he's going to go into like, oh, well, there's these populations in certain areas where they don't have, food security and maybe including some animal products in their diet adds nutrition that they're otherwise lacking or what. Like he's going to use that sort of framing to suggest that, oh, we shouldn't be recommending plant-based diets. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's always the thing. I mean, it's a very simple Motte and Bailey. Basically, he's going to say there's some, populations in sub-Saharan Africa where they could do with more dairy intake or something like that, and then say, therefore, there's no need for any of us in the West to be reducing our meat consumption, and we can carry on eating as much meat from fat. And they do the same thing with agroecology, by the way. It's like, well, there are some agroecological systems where animals can provide some sort of benefits to ecosystems. And therefore, we can carry on eating as much meat from factory farms as we want. It's like, okay, yeah, very simple stuff.
I think we have to be very careful if we expand this diet beyond the group of people that follow it, under their own responsibility, and especially for groups with higher needs. I think it's a restrictive diet. It throws out several food groups. You can say, of course, animal source food, so one food group, but actually it's an umbrella terminology for eggs, for dairy, for fish, for meat. I forget a few. And so if you make your diets restrictive, they become less robust. And that's why it may work for some people that approach it very carefully, that do have the constitution to
pause
handle
that
those
if you can.
diets.
He said if you remove certain food groups, it becomes less robust. So, or certain foods or whatever. What if you removed things like, I don't know, sugar sweetened beverages? Does that make your diet, quote unquote, less robust? Like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's so, right. And obviously he's going to use that to talk about animal foods, but no, there can absolutely be benefit to removing certain types of foods. If we're talking about health outcomes, and I would put red meat in that category. So yeah, that's just a sort of bizarre statement.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is one of the many I don't know what to call it other than just like a pseudo-scientific framing of how to approach health science in general, right? And I mean, I think all of the I think we're going to get into, they're going to talk about bioavailability and all this kind of stuff, right? And I think that the main point there is that these are like theoretical mechanisms by which foods could be more or less healthy. And you could form some sort of speculations about health impacts based on those theoretical mechanisms. But if you have evidence from actual health outcomes of people who have actually consumed these different groups of foods, then that just completely supersedes the theoretical stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, and that applies to all of the stuff about bioavailability, all of the stuff about ultra-processed, nutrient density, right? That's another one that they like, that is kind of a key buzzword for these guys. The response to all of that stuff is just to say, that's a theoretical mechanism and it's superseded by actual health outcomes data. Shut up.
Yeah.
But it may be risky for those people that are not having the proper resources and knowledge, but also then are closer to the to the risky domain of nutrient intake. And then of course we talk about young women, young females, lactating pregnant women, but also young adolescent females. We talk about children, infants, talk about older adults. We talk about the metabolically compromised, people that have metabolic challenges, and so forth. And then it becomes much more difficult. Again, it may not be impossible, but you're taking risks which I think should probably be avoided. And those risks, well, you've talked about it. There's a whole list of things we can mention on the nutrient side level. There's several nutrients that are more difficult to source from plants only. You can supplement, you can try to combine plant sources. You can take your best precautions to that as best as good as you can, but it is sometimes not all that easy. And it's the way it's represented in public discourse is sometimes quite optimistic.
It's so vague, isn't it? It's so like not really actually saying anything.
Yeah.
It's all very implication and a little bit poetic sometimes, and as it, like allusions. What he hasn't said is like these groups for which there's shown health outcome data showing worse outcomes if they're vegan. He's saying, well, if you're in these various groups, it might be harder to get some nutrients, and right, there's no. If there was health outcome data showing that it's worth, he would say that, right?
Yeah, and also like he mentioned like metabolic challenges. Like what does that mean? Let's unpack what you're trying to say there. Or actually, for pretty much everything he said, I would just ask him like, well, can you clarify what you mean by that? You know, and then obviously go into what data would you say for that? It's a super vague statement, and I was letting it play through. I was thinking about telling you to pause, and I was like, no, we'll see if he elaborates on it. So I mean, maybe he gets into specifics here, hopefully, but. I mean, the timestamp, the timestamp is almost done in like 2 minutes, and it says exploring vegan diets, risk, and nutritional concerns. So is that it? Is that all we're going to get for it? Or is he going to maybe touch on other stuff? I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, yes, you're right. I see. Okay, yeah, well.
Right, like the timestamp's almost over.
Let's see.
We have a few minutes, basically.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the specifics now. If you think about nutrients, which ones are you most concerned with? I mean, you think about when populations consume low animal source foods naturally because they're in poverty, so in lower income contexts, but also in these which we have seen a few studies out looking at, you know, in a wealthy context, in a high income country, trying to compare a vegan diet to a omnivorous diet. What are the challenges that you see in terms of nutrient adequacy?
Well, there are a couple of classical nutrients that usually pop up, like vitamin B12, of course, is a typical one. We have the commonly addressed point that iron deficiency may show up. Calcium deficiency is sometimes mentioned. A range of other B vitamins in some cases, some minerals that are also not always that easy to find, like iodine if you don't have fortified staple foods. But also some nutrients we talk less about, we address it to a lesser degree.
Can we pause there? Let's
DHA,
touch on
for
those really
instance,
quick.
Long chain omega-3.
Okay, so I pulled up a review from 2021, Newfangirl and colleagues. They actually think it was just two, Newfangirl and a Lander. I'm probably absolutely butchering their names, but they looked at the nutrients that are potentially at risk of inadequacy, and then those that are favorably high in different dietary patterns. And on a vegan dietary pattern, I mean, yeah, there's B12, there's vitamin D, there's EPA and DHA, calcium, iodine. They mention iron, but I'll touch on that in a minute, and zinc. But then for favorably high, there's fiber, polyunsaturated fats as a whole, ALA, which is the omega-3 that's found in plant foods, and to some degree in animal food. Vitamins B1 and B6, which is also weird because he suggested that like the whole range of B vitamins were potentially an issue on plant-based diets when really it's just the B12. Vitamin C, E, folate, magnesium. But then if you look at meat eaters, it almost flips. So they are at risk of inadequacy of fiber, polyunsaturated fats, ALA, vitamin D, E, folate, calcium, magnesium. And then they have favorably high intakes of protein, niacin, which is vitamin B2, sorry, B3, and then vitamin B12 and zinc. So it just changes where your areas of focus is depending on the overall dietary pattern. And no matter which dietary pattern you're on, yeah, you need to focus a bit or you might fall short in certain areas. Um, Now, regarding iron, because I think that's worth touching on a little bit more, we do see that vegans tend to have lower ferritin levels, which is one of the storage forms of iron that we typically measure on a blood test. And if you have really low levels for a long period of time, you can end up anemic. So you don't produce enough of the hemoglobin, which makes up red blood cells. And that is obviously problematic. And you can actually have symptoms of deficiency before you reach anemia. So it's not like necessarily that you have to wait for that point. That said, it is the most prevalent or most common nutrient deficiency in the world, especially affects women of reproductive age. Certainly affects people living in impoverished nations because they just aren't getting it in their diet, or at least not very much of it. And but we actually don't see necessarily higher risks of anemia or ferritin levels below the standard cutoff for iron deficiency in between vegans and meat eaters in most Western populations. And so even though they tend to have somewhat lower ferritin, which is that storage form, they don't necessarily have more rates of deficiency. And this is in part because actually inflammation can raise ferritin. So there was one recent study that actually adjusted for CRP, which is a measure of inflammation. And when they did that, there was no significant difference in ferritin levels. That difference only existed when you didn't account for inflammation, because meat eaters tend to have somewhat higher rates of or levels of inflammation. And because of that, their ferritin gets bumped up a little bit sort of artificially. And so it looks like they're doing a little bit better. So it's actually not clear that iron is a big problem. And a part of this is, even if we do absorb less iron from plant foods, which is, we'll say, generally true, you also get way more iron from a lot of plant foods. Like the iron content of zinc outpaces most animal foods by far. I'm sorry, did I say iron levels of zinc? Sorry, iron levels of lentils in lentils far outpaces most animal foods. But you just don't necessarily absorb as high of a percentage. So you end up approximately getting, we'll say, similar amounts. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance there depending on a number of other factors. So I don't think there's a strong case to be made for that. And then you mentioned iodine as well. And iodine is a problem in pretty much every dietary pattern. I've seen a number of analyses now looking at urinary iodine levels, and there's a huge rate of low levels, potentially deficiency sort of levels in pretty much all dietary patterns. Fish eaters tend to have higher levels, but even with them, there's a decent number who have low urinary iodine status. So that's just one that I think a lot of people need to be somewhat maybe focused on. And the main concern with low iodine or iodine deficiency is that it can lead to hypothyroidism. And now we don't see higher rates of hypothyroidism in vegans. Again, going to the outcomes, as you mentioned, if we look at the actual end result, we don't see higher rates in vegans than meat eaters. So it's not clear that it is this broad problem, or if it's just a problem for all. But it's one of the reasons that iodine is added to salt, is because there just aren't a lot of sources of iodine in the diet. And so people choosing like pink Himalayan salt or whatever, they actually might be missing out on iodine because it would otherwise be found in your standard table salt.
Oh, damn. Okay, that's super interesting. So to summarize what you said on what they're saying here, well, so there's a few things. One is that they are basically cherry picking the nutrients which show up less favorable for a vegan diet, and just ignoring all of those which show up more favorable. Another one is that they're talking about some problems which are not unique to vegan diets at all, and apply across diets as well. And then, obviously there's the broader point, which overall, all of this, compared to looking at health outcomes data, is just kind of in the weeds. Yeah, if there was some health outcomes data showing worse health outcomes for vegan diets, they certainly would have mentioned it by now. Hey, well, maybe
Yeah,
they still
yeah,
will.
exactly. You'd hope, and then they're also ignoring the fact that meat eaters tend to have lower intakes of other nutrients
Right.
that they need to focus on, right? So they're ignoring that point as well,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
If you're including more meat and dairy and all of that, you're displacing something else. And plant and animal foods tend to have different sorts of uh, micronutrients that are more concentrated, and so you're going to be shifting that one way or another, unless you're obviously focusing on specific things, which is what I recommend. No matter what your dietary pattern is, you want to make sure you're getting what you need, or heck, take a simple multivitamin to cover some bases.
All right, let's kick on. Let's see what else they have. Let's see what else they have for us.
Fatty acid is not an easy one. Choline is pretty difficult. Vitamin D, vitamin A in some cases. So there's a range, and it really depends on the quality of the foods you're consuming and the access you have to fortification and supplements. But I guess those are the often mentioned ones that sometimes fall up.
Yeah, how about protein? Do you see any issue with vegan
Oh
populations
boy.
having inadequate protein or suboptimal protein?
It depends also where you put your protein need. So we have the often mentioned 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day, which is considered to be a level of protein intake that corresponds with the replenishment of your nitrogen requirements in mostly healthy people. But again, if you have higher demands for growth, for muscle recovery, because of metabolic illness, you may need higher proportions, and you can reach it with plant proteins as well. It may mean higher volumes. It may mean more calories in some cases. It may also mean that if you really want to hit the high levels, you may have to consider proteins, isolates or protein powders. You can reach it with plant proteins, but again, you make it more difficult.
And then there's this
Okay, let's pause that for a
bioavailability
second.
issue, right? Where
So
you don't.
we'll get to bioavailability in a second, but I mean, I would agree if you were just to become vegan and you're just kind of looking for, hey, whatever's labeled as vegan, I'll consume it. But yeah, you might have a harder time reaching the higher intakes as far as protein. But this unique suggestion that, if you're vegan and you're trying to hit the high levels, like let's say 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is typically recommended for like hypertrophy, for gaining muscle. I mean, most meat eaters are going to be taking a supplement at that point as well. That's not something that's exclusive to vegans. Also, this idea that you need to increase volume or calorie intake to hit the higher protein levels isn't necessarily true either. If you swap cow's milk, let's say full fat milk, like a 3.25% or even a 2%, for soy milk, you actually increase your protein per calorie. If you swap out eggs for tofu, you increase your protein per calorie. If you replace your 80% lean beef for, which is pretty like standard in like a restaurant or especially fast food restaurants and that sort of thing. If you replace that with tofu, about the same protein per calorie. Now, if you took extra lean meat, which maybe they're advocating for, then you would have to replace it with something like seitan or TVP to get a similar protein per calorie content, but that can certainly be done. So it's not so much that, like, I think if you're uneducated altogether, it's possible that your protein intake would go down. In fact, I'd say it's more likely that your protein intake would decline. But rather than this sort of fear mongering stuff that they're doing here, why don't we educate people about that? Why don't we explain, like, hey, if you're going to be replacing cow's milk, try soy milk or pea-based milk because they're higher in protein as well. Actually, even higher in protein than a lot of dairy milk. If you're replacing meats, choose these high protein options. Like, I just don't like the idea of just saying, "Oh no, it's hard, so don't do it." That's the sort of vibe that I get from what they're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they're ignoring the downsides of having meat in your diet, right? That you mentioned replacing mince and getting like a similar protein percentage. Some of the plant-based meats often have higher protein percentage on them compared to red meats, anyways. And
especially the seitan based ones are really high, like the wheat based ones or the wheat gluten based ones, super high.
Okay, all right, yeah, good. That's a good tip. And yeah, so I was looking at protein as a percentage of calories, and then there's some which are even per 100 grams are higher than like a beef burger, for example, which I was posting about the other day. And I mean, it was predicted a few years ago, and it has kind of come true. Like, well, obviously, that plant-based products in the last 5 years have just gotten better. They've gotten cheaper. They've gotten healthier. They've gotten tastier, and there's the direction that they'll continue to go. There was quite an intense period where certainly in the UK this is what it was like. You'd go to the supermarket and there's different brands every week. There was a real churn of new market entrants and people leaving the market and so on, and that has left us with the best ones surviving, and they've gotten cheaper pound for pound than meat in a lot of European countries now, which was not the case even 3 years ago.
That's super good to hear.
Yeah, it's definitely going in the right direction, and of course during that time meat has remained as meat and has been no major nutritional advancements in the formulation, right? So there you go.
The high levels, you may have to consider proteins, isolates or protein powders. You can reach it with plant proteins, but again, you make it more difficult.
And then there's this bioavailability issue, right, where you don't necessarily have the same quality, the same amount of essential amino acids. So you can have some challenges with certain amino acids if you're not kind of combining diverse sources of plant proteins, right?
Right. So the higher your protein quality is, the closer you can stick, I guess, to the 0.8 level. And again, you would probably prefer higher targets than the 0.8. But the higher your protein quality is, the easier it becomes to hit the target.
Yeah.
Okay, can you pause that? Okay, literally no data to support that. I would have loved to have seen a reference for that. That's ridiculous. So like they don't even define protein quality here or bioavailability or anything. They're just like throwing out buzzwords. I would assume maybe they were talking about the DIAS or DIAS score, which is basically they measure protein intake, or so they like feed foods typically to pigs. They measure how much protein goes in and then how much winds up at the end of the small intestine. They basically insert a tube through the abdomen to the end of the small intestine. It's pretty nasty and not great for the pigs, but that's how they sort of suck out the protein at that point, and then they measure how much was presumably digested. And then they give it a score. Now, everybody misinterprets like the scoring system or misunderstands the scoring system to think that it's literally just the amount of protein that was absorbed, but it's not. They look at the amino acid profile and how much of the least prevalent amino acid was absorbed and compared to some like reference protein. So basically there's 9 essential amino acids that we need to consume in our diet. And they'll take whichever one is present in the least amount in that food, essentially. In most cases, that's what it's going to be. So let's say you take beans and methionine is a little bit lacking. It's there. All the essential amino acids are in all the plant foods, but it's just in a lesser amount there. And then let's say just for sake of argument, you absorbed let's say you absorbed 100% of it. Okay. And just for sake of argument, let's say that food provides about 50% of your of the methionine that you would need to meet however much is in the comparator. You would get a DIAS score of 50, even if you absorbed 100% of the protein. And that's because you're only getting 50% of whatever the target amount of methionine is. That would be like if you were to have a report card, and this is the analogy I typically use, and you had 9 subjects, you got straight A's on 8 of them, but you got a C+ on one of them, your score is a C+ on the full report card. That's just all you get. Nobody sees anything else.
Right.
Right, because you're not showing the rest of it. Now, if that was the only food you consumed and you consumed literally nothing else in your diet, then maybe that's a consideration that, hey, you might not get enough of this particular amino acid. But in reality, we eat more than one food. I think we would both recommend that people eat somewhat of a varied plant-based diet, that you're having beans, but you're also having like tofu, you're having nuts and seeds, you're having grains and whatnot. And when you eat all of that, and it doesn't have to be combined at every meal, like some people suggest, it's just throughout the day, you will do just fine. And this idea that for some reason, if you have proteins with higher scores, again, assuming that they're talking about the scoring system because it's the most common one I see cited. Assuming that that's the case, what evidence is there to suggest that you need less overall protein, like 0.8, and you'd be fine? Like that just 0.8, you're okay to survive that, absolutely, and to grow and all of that. But we do have evidence now that higher is better, and specifically focusing on plant protein is best when it comes to health outcomes. And that's an extremely consistent finding. I'd say one of the most consistent findings I've seen in the nutrition literature is the swap of animal protein for plant protein, leading to lower risks of like cardiovascular disease, of mortality, and so on. So yeah, again, it's just they're making really vague statements with basically no evidence.
Yes, that's right. And I've been appreciating your posts about that this week, because I have also been hammering that drum and saying plant-based meat's healthier than meat. The big ultra-processed buzz is really trying to propagandize on that point, really. Like, a lot of it really is pointed at plant-based meat alternatives with the implication that they're going to be unhealthy because they're ultra-processed. They are not. They are going to be healthier than meat, and I'm sick of pretending they're not.
Yeah.
Short, a lot of concerns around nutrients. So you make it harder. It's basically restricting the diet in a way that prevents you from being able to get all the nutrients you need unless you're very, very intentional, right? And you have access to all of the diverse foods, potentially.
Okay, I hate to pause it again because this is going to take forever, but I have to address that.
Oh, a lot of the health stuff, by the way, seems to be at the start. So this is where the bulk of our...
Yeah, I feel like I'll hit most of it. So I always hear this, oh, you have to be super, rigorous in how you construct your diet. You need to be super careful, blah, blah, blah. Vegans consistently have better health outcomes than meat eaters in the general population, based on like population level data, observational data in whether it's the UK, whether it's America, or even other populations. And we have plenty of data from a variety of populations, all sorts of countries around the world, looking at nutrient intake and status. And again, we'll see certain nutrients might be a little bit more lacking in a plant-based diet, other ones a little more lacking in the meat-inclusive or omnivorous diets. These are not like rocket scientists. These are people in the general population who are reporting their dietary intake, or in some cases, maybe they're recording it through other methods, especially when we're looking at like nutrient intake and status. And they're doing just fine and arguably better than the meat eaters consistently, even when they're otherwise pretty health conscious populations. How can you make this argument that you need to be like super rigorous in your construction of the diet in order to be healthy on it? Now, are there certain things that I think people should consider? Vitamin B12, things like that, absolutely. But I think most vegans know that at this point. There's little else that would differentiate them from meat eaters. Let's even say vitamin D is a concern. I mean, that's probably a concern for meat eaters too, especially I live in Canada, you're in the UK. These are places where we don't get a lot of sunlight, so maybe that's something to consider. Like, there's a lot of overlap in the areas that people would need to be somewhat concerned with. And again, the health outcome data just points towards vegans, tend to be healthier.
Yeah, for sure. And it really reads as if it's from the list of talking points or the list of framings or something. I mean, probably some of these things have been focus grouped, and they think, oh yeah, people find this to be an intuitive way to go about it. I mean, if you're looking at the health outcomes data, you'd be more sensible to say that meat eaters should be especially careful when constructing their diet, right?
Yeah, so I actually co-authored a paper on that. It was called Reassessing, I think it's called Reassessing the Careful Planning Caveat with Vegan and Vegetarian Diets. Nice. Give or take, that was the title. So I published that, that was like a month or two ago with David Goldman. He was the lead author. And we made that specific point. Like, we addressed all the health outcome data, we addressed the nutrient intake and status data. And we actually made the argument. I had it initially written in a little bit of a cheekier way, but I was like, no, that's too much for a scientific publication. So I had to tweak it a little bit. That was the initial draft. But basically, yeah, like if you're really considered about this whole like careful planning and you need to really monitor your intake, well then yeah, meat eaters need to be very careful about getting too much saturated fat, about minimizing their dietary cholesterol, about increasing their fiber, and increasing their folate intake. And we can make a bunch of other arguments, but like those are some of the things that when you actually look at the hard health outcomes, they're probably more important to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are going to eat meat, you should be very careful in planning a diet.
And
Now-
again, if your own body also supports it, which may not always be the case. It's so what is often underestimated is the individual variation at the level of nutrient requirements. Okay, we try to cover that with the RDAs and at population level, but still,
Okay, I'm going to pause it
people
again
can be
because I
very,
just
very
can't.
different.
Yeah. Okay, so is there some level of individual or personalization that could be, considered with nutrition? Absolutely. But the ways, like, especially if someone's coming to this for ethical reasons, they want to adopt a vegan diet. I have not yet seen a case where it wouldn't be possible. Are there cases where it might be more extreme? Like, for example, I have a friend with Crohn's disease who's vegan, very outspoken vegan. And during times of flares, he has to really modify his diet. So when he has a IBD flare, he has to minimize intake of a lot of fibers and things like that. And he will literally just have meal replacement shakes. Like he'll just live on meal replacement shakes for a week or a week and a half, whatever it is. So he gets good nutrition in, but he doesn't have to harm animals in the process. And might not be the most enjoyable diet, but he does it. And obviously that's a very extreme case. But if somebody has like an intolerance or a sensitivity to a certain food or food allergies or something like that, well, then you can navigate that. We have so many different ways with like supplementation, with different protein sources now. Heck, we have like culture meat coming down the pike too, which is a whole other topic. But I mean, there's so many ways to navigate it that yes, you can personalize it within a vegan framework. And at the same time, why don't they apply that to an animal-based diet? What if somebody's a cholesterol hyperabsorber where their lipids can shoot up quite a lot just by including dietary cholesterol? Should you consider that when constructing their diet and especially high cholesterol foods like eggs? Or do you just not worry about it? So it goes both ways, but of course they would never apply it in the other direction.
Yeah, that's a super good point. I had not thought of that before. This and that tends to be the case on a lot of these vague talking points. It's like, well, you could just as easily say this about a meat eating diet, right? There's no. It's a very non-rigorous way of approaching this evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's kick on.
I mentioned DHA before, so the way people convert fatty acids, for instance, differs. The way we convert the provitamin A into retinol, there's several factors there that may be responsible for failure. Some people on vegan diets.
Okay, let's pause that too. It's constant here.
The retinol thing.
Yeah, it's constant. Okay, so with DHA, for starters, there's actually a recent study showing that vegans ramp up their conversion to DHA just through the fact that they aren't consuming direct sources of DHA or EPA unless they're supplementing like an algae-based oil. So that's interesting. Again, when it comes to the outcomes related to EPA and DHA, like heart disease, vegans tend to already do better. Now, the question is, could they benefit even further? It's not a question of are they suffering because they aren't directly taking DHA sources. It's could they benefit further by supplementing, and if they wanted to, they can use an algae-based source. It's a vegan source. And at this point, I would say the data is not all that strong for it anyway. But if someone wanted to supplement as a precautionary measure, yeah, I think that's somewhat reasonable. I don't think I would push back on anybody making that recommendation. Now, with the vitamin A and retinol, I also published a paper on that with David Goldman, where we went over carnitine, creatine, retinol, and I think there was one more, or vitamin K2. And in there, we actually went over data looking at even if you take people who genetically are very poor converters of beta carotene, which is like the orange color in carrots and sweet potatoes that we convert into vitamin A or retinol, even if you take people who can't convert it very well, they still convert enough with a pretty small amount of those foods. Like I think it was like a cup, or in the worst case scenario, it was like a cup and a half or maybe 2 cups of like carrots, or something. Like it wasn't a lot. And that's excluding all other sources in your entire diet. So obviously it would be less if you considered a more complete diet. So even in those cases, I don't think you can make that argument. And again, they're just making these broad claims. I haven't seen them even try to cite any data so far, and I feel like this is really common in these types of conversations. Whereas I think if we did watch Gil Carvalho's interview, the one that I was mentioning earlier on Ty's channel, I bet Gil was citing stuff left and right. I can almost guarantee it because he's like that. So it's just interesting that literally not a single paper has been cited so far.
Yeah, for sure. And that's an interesting example of the sort of rhetorical strategy here, which I find to be quite similar to a lot of what Frederic Leroy and his merry men do in the Dublin Declaration as well, where the strategy is like, we're not necessarily going to say anything which is incorrect or technically untrue, but we are going to say a bunch of technically correct things arranged in a way to lead you to a certain belief. And then when you say, well, that's not the case, they can say, well, we never said that. We never said that.
Yeah.
We just said all of these empirical facts which might lead you to think that a vegan diet might be unhealthy, but don't actually show it. And so if you or I would just interject in this conversation and say, well, hang on a minute, the vegans have better health outcomes, they could say, well, we never contested that. But they can, of course, just have like uninterrupted lots of implying it, basically.
Yeah.
Be more comfortable with such a diet.
Mm-hmm. And then, so there's a variation, but there's also, I think we didn't really highlight this, but the bioavailability of the plant sources is really quite limited in many cases. So B12, there's really barely any bioavailable B12 in plants. There's these very specific types of seaweed that have potentially some bioavailable B12, but it's not something that's practical
Or you
to
take a
scale
supplement
globally.
or
Right.
And then you
fortified
have
foods.
things like
Oh, actually,
vitamin
on that
A.
note, if you want to pause quick, just really quick, there was a trial done where they compared pork. This was in kids. I believe they might have actually had B12 deficiency as well. It was in like Africa or something. And they, or at least low B12 status to start. They took pork and cereal that was fortified with B12 and then cereal that wasn't fortified with B12. And they randomized them to the different groups. And the amount of B12 in the fortified cereal and in the pork were identical. So they actually matched them up. So they quantified how much was in there and they added it to the cereal. And the cereal increased B12 levels more than the pork. So that's actually an argument for supplementation or fortification being more bioavailable than meat. And that makes perfect sense. When you're consuming B12 in meat, it's attached to the protein. Your stomach acid has to break it apart from the protein, and then you have to absorb it, and there's like a protein carrier for it. And so it really relies on having a healthy gut to begin with, and it declines with age. So over age 50, and especially once you're 65 plus, your absorption of B12 declines because you don't produce as much stomach acid and that intrinsic factor that is used to carry the B12. Whereas with supplements or with fortification, it's not bound to protein. So, and it's in typically higher doses, not in that particular trial, but especially in supplements and in a lot of fortified foods in higher doses. And so you absorb it a lot easier.
That's super interesting. So that's another example of a way where this processed foods bad analysis is going to go astray, because and bioavailability is something they typically talk about in that criticism. Here's an example of a food where the more processed version is going to have more bioavailability of the nutrient.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you're talking about animal source foods, like what is cheaper, a B12 supplement or actually just broad fortification of foods that people already eat, the cheap foods that people already eat, or recommending meat? Like, I mean, especially in places where there's food insecurity, you think meat is going to be the answer there, where they don't have access to anything? Like it's just absurd.
Yeah. And the idea that you would, yeah, I mean, it's just not going to be a good health recommendation, is it? The idea that you would introduce red meat for B12,
Yeah.
when you can easily get it from other sources, you're going to definitely have worse health outcomes if you do this. But
And I mean, just cost wise, it's worse
right.
too in places where they already don't have the money. Like they aren't going to go start purchasing meat, for their B12. When I mean, if you were to bulk buy it, you can get, if you were to take like a high dose once or twice a week, you could bulk buy this, to a point that it might cost you a few bucks per year, if you were to order the huge packs. But either way, it's just like it's so ridiculous. I think fortification is really the answer to a lot of those concerns around like individual micronutrients, especially ones like B12 where there isn't really harm of excess. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I'm always just banging the drum against the whole ultra processed foods discourse. That is another way that, I know that there are some, uh, I think tofu or tempeh or perhaps both products available for sale in the UK where they have a fortified version of it, but they also sell an unfortified version because then it can have the organic label, and if it has fortification,
Yeah.
so it's like, well, okay, you got the organic, it's going to make it less healthy, but okay,
Yeah. You're advertising an inferior product.
right. But that's another like naturalistic fallacy, isn't it? Is the whole thing of ultra processed foods. It's just one big naturalistic fallacy, particularly with respect to meat alternatives, as we've seen, which have again better health markers than meat consumption.
On average, it's about 1/12 of
Yes.
the absorption, right? Converting from these plant-based carotenoids like, beta carotene in a carrot or an orange sweet potato. You have bioavailability issues with iron, with zinc because of inhibitors.
Already
and
addressed.
you don't have heme iron, which is more bioavailable, which is lacking in plants. There's other issues beyond just the macronutrients.
I mean,
right?
heme
So I
iron
think
might be damaging in some ways. I mean, there's I'd say the evidence needs to be stronger there, but there is evidence of it. There's mechanistic evidence of of it potentially having like pro-cancer properties. There's
Right.
some mechanistic evidence leading to or promoting atherosclerosis. And while we don't have like hard health outcome data looking at just heme iron in isolation, heme iron intake in the diet as a whole is associated with worse outcomes in regard to colorectal cancer and cardiovascular disease. But obviously that comes in the package of red meat typically, and so there's a lot of things that play. But either way, it's like we don't have good evidence to support that you actually want a lot of heme iron in the diet, and there's more evidence pointing towards it possibly not being a good thing. Certainly in the context of things like red meat, which is obviously how they're talking about it.
Interesting, yeah. And again, the argument from their perspective is often framed as like, what are the things that you're going to miss out on that would be good for you, with no consideration what are the things you're going to miss out on that would be bad for you. So yeah, similar to saturated fat conversation, everything
is omega-3s you talked about, DHA. So you can get algae supplements, but again, if that's the solution worldwide, that everyone has to be able to purchase and afford these expensive DHA algae supplements, that's a big challenge. But in general, the conversions.
Hold on. Well, for starters, like I talked about earlier, it's not even clear that is something that would be. I mean, I would say it's not necessary. That we can say with a higher degree of certainty. As to whether it's beneficial, it's unclear. We'll say possibly. And yeah, like not everyone can afford that. Not everybody can afford fish oil supplements or fish either. Like fish is not particularly cheap as being the primary source for EPA and DHA. If they want to talk about the EPA and DHA in like an egg or something, I mean, it's tiny. It's nothing. So it's like, what are you comparing it to, and how much more cost effective would that other option be? It's not clear to me here.
Yeah, that's a fair point. There's not, again, no sort of data tried to be cited that this is a more expensive way of doing it.
It's very poor from these plant sources of ALA. Things in, flax seeds or chia seeds, those types of things. It's maybe at best 10-1, oftentimes less when you look at the actual conversion.
And also,
so if we look at, so nutrients are
one thing. If you pause it for a second, they always talk about omega-3s in the context of the benefits of EPA and DHA, but actually ALA consumption is very strongly and consistently associated with cardiovascular and mortality benefits. So there might be some unique benefits to ALA alone as well. Like they kind of talk about it like, oh, don't worry about those foods because they just have this kind of omega-3. Well, that kind of omega-3 might actually be good to have, and it's actually the only one with an adequate intake, like a DRI. EPA and DHA do not have dietary reference intakes, and they are not deemed essential. ALA is the only one that's deemed essential. So that's another important consideration.
Okay, good. Wow, I'm glad I'm doing this with you. Your knowledge of this stuff is encyclopedic. It's awesome.
I've heard the same stuff a million times, so
I bet. Yeah.
and they have their own implications. But I think a lot of people really want to know what are the health outcomes, right? Because, maybe the nutrient status
Yes.
appears to be diminished, or there's some sort of challenge, but does that translate into health status, health outcomes? And I think what I'm curious to know from your perspective is a lot of advocates of the highly plant-based or vegan diets are looking at things like heart disease specifically.
I wonder if we're going to get a critique of epidemiology here when they've
100%.
mechanism.
I'm not even wondering. I know absolutely with a high degree of certainty that is where it's going.
Yeah, and in case that's point, I'm sure that point might be lost on some people. The thing here is they're going to talk about how epidemiology is not reliable because there's too many confounding factors, whatever, right? You're only looking at kind of long-term outcomes. It's not an experimental source. And they've only been talking about mechanism, which is less important than epidemiology. So let's see if that's where we're going.
Yeah.
They're looking at longevity. So trying to understand how does this affect your overall lifespan or health span. Can you talk about these health outcomes, but maybe on the concerning side? Do you see anemia? Do you see issues with bone health? Do you see muscle? Like, what is it that you really...
You want to talk about anemia?
No, it just we'll see what he says, but just as soon as they talked about anemia, they bone health, and actually he did mention longevity, but I was thinking these aren't the leading killers and
Yes.
those sorts of outcomes. But let's see what he brings up.
You're concerned about with vegan.
Well, so I've been looking at some point at the case reports coming out of the medical literature, and okay, I know they're in the hierarchy of evidence, they're always a bit poo-pooed, but I don't think that's really fair, because in the case of infants and young children, we do have very, very concerning case reports described for vegan,
case reports
when they put on vegan diets.
Oh my God.
And that includes things like failure to thrive, rickets, anemia, psychosis.
I'll just pause real quick.
Neurological.
Yeah, so this will be short, but pretty much every single case report I've ever seen like this is on a very low calorie, low protein, typically raw vegan, unsupplemented sort of diet where they replace formula with almond milk without fortification, or something like that. It's going to be some variation of that. This is not representative of the type of plant-based diet that we would recommend. And you can probably find similar cases where maybe they have some animal foods in there, but it's a similar sort of thing where they clearly just aren't eating enough. Like maybe they include eggs, but everything else I said is still true. Okay, are you going to now say that omnivorous diets are bad or whatever? So yeah, it's nonsense.
Certainly, yeah. Well, certainly you could find case reports of, with some bad health outcomes for kids who had too much animal products, whatever it may be. The case reports are anecdotes, really, right? They're just recorded.
Yeah, they are
cases. One case.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not. They're poo-pooed, as Leroy says.
And it's funny. Well, that's what's so funny about it. He acknowledged that they're considered trash evidence, but then went on to cite it anyway.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
So this is really lower than even the mechanistic stuff, which they're talking about before.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is literally just, I knew a guy.
Yeah.
Pathologies in the eyes and the brain, really, really serious cases.
And I should say, really quickly before you continue, case studies. So these are probably more important in this case because it's a population level. So few people actually consume a fully vegan diet.
You gotta be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Okay, let's not look at the farm study with, I don't know, 1,000 kids or whatever they had. Let's not look at the German Vichy studies with at least hundreds of kids, if not in the thousands. I can't remember. Let's not look at all of these. These isolated cases are super important and relevant here because there aren't that many vegans in the population. That's insane logic to me. It's like, hey, let's look at these anecdotes. Okay, well, what if we look at I don't know. I wonder if they say the same thing about carnivore anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
Whether positively or negative, I wonder if they grant them more weight because there are I'd say fewer carnivores in the population than there are vegans. Likely anyway. I don't know. I haven't seen the exact numbers. I would assume so. But I wonder if they grant that same sort of weight. That's crazy. As two people who are supposed to be scientists.
yes, if we could find one person on a carnivore diet who had a bad health outcome, we could say, well, this case study, I mean, there aren't that many carnivores, so this case study is
Yeah,
pretty much an RCT now.
yeah,
It's even in the US, it's about 1%
Yeah.
at any given time, right? So the case study, it's sort of like if there's this
like a
movement to
million
scale,
people, over a
Yes,
million people.
yeah,
Yeah,
what's the
that's over a
dominance?
million people. Not enough. A million people is not enough. That's crazy. That
Yeah,
is so wild.
so one case study is probably fine since it's only 1%, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Or well, no, 1% of no, sorry, it'd be more. It'd be like 3-4 million, something like that, whatever it is. So,
Right.
yeah, that's crazy.
scale up vegan diets or plant-based diets at a higher and higher, then what are going to be the implications? Well, you do need to go to some of these other evidence sources because the population level data is not necessarily going to pick up on that.
Right. Yes. And so
What?
they give you a kind of
Because
No, it's like
because
the
yeah,
it sounds to me honestly like they haven't even looked at the data. Like that's what this sounds to me like. Oh, hey, we don't have population level data on this, so let's look at anecdotes. Versus like we actually do have quite a bit. In fact, I did a whole video, a long one with Danny Ishe on his channel a while ago with another friend of ours, Matt Medor, who now has a master's in nutrition. Super smart and knowledgeable in this area. Um, we did a whole breakdown of, at least at the time, all of the studies that were available on vegetarian and vegan kids, and now there are a few more as well. But to suggest it just, I wonder if they're going to mention a single one of these studies. So like keep in mind the Vici studies, the farm study as being some of the bigger ones. There was a similar one done in Britain as well. I can't remember the title of it. But let's keep in mind, like, do they actually talk about any of these studies that measured over time, like growth metric, development metrics compared to meat eaters and so on? Or are they literally just going to focus on these isolated cases?
yeah, it seems like they might be. This is the section called health outcomes on vegan diets. So this is it.
Yeah.
This is the bones of the attack on veganism. This is the best stuff.
Unreal.
of potential description of the potential impact of those diets. And because of the seriousness of it, I think we should take it very carefully. I notice people often refer to the report on vegan and vegetarian diets coming out of the American Nutrition Dietetics Association, where they say that basically you can go ahead as long as you supplement B12. Well,
that's not what they said. That is absolute crap. That is not what they said. They talked about an appropriately planned. Now, mind you, there's a newer update to that, but they said appropriately planned plant-based diets, whether vegan or vegetarian, can support health, basically be nutritionally adequate, support health, maybe even improve health outcomes. The older one said like all stages of life. The newest one was solely focused on adults, but it sounds like they're probably going to have a separate one for kids where they synthesize all the data, because they actually did a systematic review this time, whereas in the past it was more of like a narrative review type thing. So obviously it takes a lot more resources. But no, they didn't just say the supplement B12. They talked about things like vitamin D. They talked about food groups, like overall food quality. Like that is such a straw man of what the guideline or what the A&D paper actually said, that like I wonder if like that has to be intentional. Maybe I'm being disingenuous here, but like I don't see how you can say that if you've actually read the report.
Yeah, just take B12 and you're good to go. That's pretty much. That's actually all you need.
Yeah.
Pediatric associations globally, from France, from Germany, from Italy, I think even from Spain, and those are much more careful. In Belgium, we have the Royal Academy of Medicine, we have the Superior Health Council that are specifically warning that in the case of young children, we should be very, very careful. The Swiss have done the same thing. There's a whole list of professional associations that are warning against vegan diets. And I think we just go very lightly over it, and we have to be very, very careful if we're going in that direction. We don't have, as we say, we don't have the data. We
So
don't have
I'm not
studies
sure
on this as such.
Wait, okay, so now he just said we don't have studies, so we'll wait to see what he says about that. But I'm not sure if that's. I know the German group is less favorable towards vegan or vegetarian diet, but I don't know about a lot of the other ones that he cited. Again, at this point, I don't know how much we can just trust his word for it. I feel like we'd have to check each one to see what they actually say. But even so, like, where's the data? And it sounds like here he's saying we don't have studies, which is quite concerning. But let's see what he says.
This is going to be a pure appeal to authority.
Yeah.
No data.
Because of course you can't pass an ethical commission to start a study like this. Because the expected outcome is trouble. So we have to rely on other indicators, and I think so. On top of the medical literature looking into
what,
saying...
so he's saying it's unethical, like even to do an observational study on. Well, for one, we have a number of studies, so that's insane. Let me see if I might have the. Oh yeah, I do. I still have the Word document for we did the long video. Okay. I'm just going to quickly rattle them off. Okay, we have the Vici study. There was one publication looking at ages 1 to 3 years. We have, that was in Germany. We have the Vici 2 study, same group, but looking at different markers and like micronutrients and stuff like that. We have, I know there was the Vici Youth study. Yeah, the Vici Youth study, which was the ages 6 to 18. So looking at a bit of an older demographic, but similar design. And then we have a Polish study, ages 5 to 10. We have, what else here? The farm study, 4 months to 10 years, longitudinal study. This is a really interesting study because it was children living in a community called The Farm in like rural Tennessee. And they were like highly educated, but of low socioeconomic status in that they didn't have a lot of like finances. But they made it all work. They fortified their own soy milk and stuff, at the time before you can just buy it off the grocery shelf. And they measured like growth and development metrics. And a lot of the vegan kids, because most were vegan, some were vegetarian, most were vegan. They're in the vegan kids, most of the mothers were also vegan through pregnancy. That's also like an interesting point. And that's one of the better studies we have. We have the British Children's Study, ages 1 to 6. We have a follow-up ages 6 to 13 from that same group. We have another study where this one was done somewhere in Europe. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, there was another one ages 2 to 6. What else? We got the first year study. This was length and weight growth analysis from birth to 12 months. So through the first year of life, and they followed pregnant mothers. So vegan diets through pregnancy. And then obviously during the breastfeeding period as well. And then we have vegetarian diet growth and nutrition in early childhood, a longitudinal cohort. This one was published, I think, a little bit more recently. There's another. I mean, I'm just not going to waste more time reading, but there's more, and I could keep going down the list of all the studies we have on vegan kids. So to say that we don't have this type of research because it's unethical to study is insane, and just suggests that they haven't even looked at this topic yet. They're speaking on it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's such a weird. There's so much wrong with that we don't. There's no data on this because it would be unethical to study. There's so much misunderstanding like contained in there, and clearly just ignorance of the dozen or so studies that you just rattled off as well.
See, like this is the case where in a debate setting he would say that, and I would rattle those off, but I wouldn't stop. I would go through the full list, and then what does he say to that? Like that's just a crazy statement to make. Absolutely crazy statement to make.
Yeah, well, it would be one of those satisfying.
Pivot,
change the subject, and then you'd have to chase him down. I mean, You saw the debate I did with Paul Wood, didn't you? There was a lot of there as well.
Yeah.
Which I must admit that I watched you having a very similar debate the night before, and I followed your approach. That was on the global burden of disease studies.
The burden of proof in particular.
Stuff, yeah. And I followed exactly the argumentation that you had made. So I have a lot to thank you for going.
Yeah, thanks. No, he didn't seem to be able to handle. Like, I don't think he understood what you were saying, let alone be able to like respond. Like, he just didn't grasp the argument you were trying to make, which I thought was pretty easy to grasp. But maybe he was like purposely pleading ignorance just to like not have to engage with it. I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre, to be honest, because he is always citing that particular study, and And when we were speaking about it, he did, like, for example, I've never heard him say the phrase burden of proof. And I just don't know if he has even read the study or knows anything about like do you know what I mean? Like he's
But like
it
he
can
links
happen.
it, like he
Yeah,
links
exactly.
he
Yeah,
links
exactly.
it, but he does. I see. I
So
see.
I
That's
don't.
funny.
I'm speculating a little bit there. Maybe he knows more than I'm saying, but I've tried to go to talk to him about it and say, well, they're using this burden of proof methodology, and why would we think that that's favourable over a standard meta-analysis? And he said, the global burden of diseases is a meta-analysis, and I was like, no, I know, but it's a specific type of meta-analysis, isn't it? And it was as if that was just completely. He just didn't know what I was driving at there, which made me think I don't know how familiar he is with this at all.
No.
But yeah, okay, all right. Well, we have another. So there's another couple of minutes here on this section called "Health Outcomes of Vegan Diets," and at that point, on the 20-minute mark, it goes on to other topics. So I'm just trying to, not take up too much of your time here as well.
Yeah, we got time. Like I could theoretically go for almost another hour, maybe another 45, 50 minutes if we had to. But like, let's see what comes up. If we kind of move past the health stuff and I'm not any use, then we'll forget about it. I can head out.
All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, I'm up for going as long as you have time. But yeah, let me
Okay.
know.
Okay.
To young populations, we just have the warning coming out of both the global south and history, archaeology.
Oh, and
when people were
history.
switching from hunter-gatherer diets to the Neolithic diets, which were mostly again plant-based and cereal-based, that at least in some plant-based scenarios, things can go in a very wrong direction. Of course, a lot will depend on the quality of the foods, but so if we talk about plant-based, the plant-based terminology carries a lot of weight. Which plants are we talking about? How rich in nutrients are they? How are they combined? How do they meet the individual needs? How do they fit into the dietary patterns of a certain population? It's a complicated affair, and just stripping it down to, well, plant-based diets can be fine for everyone as long as you supplement with B12. I don't think that's a very good.
Nobody
starting
says
position.
that.
Yeah, your point that there are many other organizations outside of the U.S.
It's also, I mean, there's this report, recent report called "The New Merchants of Doubt" for these guys, and I think it's very apt because the goal is they're not actually arguing, or they have not mounted an argument that veganism is an unhealthy diet, or that there are worse health outcomes, or anything like that. The goal is just to fling enough shit so as to create an ambient level of doubt. And if you were to listen to these guys for an hour, it probably sounds quite compelling or sounds quite worrying if you're thinking about vegan diet, which is exactly the point. Now, they're not making any strong or substantiating any arguments to that effect, but they're creating doubt, right? They're merchants of doubt. And it's the same on a lot of the regenerative stuff, right? Where it's just kind of like, if we can say, hey, this vaguely is, there's some benefits to this in some circumstance, they know that that will just create just enough doubt or debate that kind of carry on with business as usual. There's no, right, it dampens that need. When there is an urgent need for some change, well, there's enough doubt now that it could be. And it was the same thing, as this report says, New Merchants of Doubt, same strategies have been used by tobacco industry defenders, where they used to say, well, a lot of lung cancer is actually genetic and there are other factors at play, right? They weren't really contesting the central thing, but they were just trying to create enough, noise around it that nothing was done. And so for climate change, right? What about solar flares, right? They're not saying, CO2 doesn't exist, but they're just trying to create enough doubt and enough delay that their industry's allowed to carry on, basically. So yeah, that's the strategy here, is just trying to create doubt, and that's why this kind of precise debunk of this kind of stuff is very useful.
US that do not endorse the safety of a vegan diet for all life stages. I think that's important. People think, oh, in the US, here we go. I'll just rely on that. And again, that information really depends on who's in
Canada
charge
agrees,
of
by the way.
scientific bodies, right? So it's not a
Yeah, well,
completely unbiased.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, so
perspective.
at least I don't know.
And yeah, if it's favourable to plant-based diet, well, we really have to look at who's on that committee and who's on that authority. It could be some bias there, but
Yeah, well, sorry, Freddie. Which panels and boards are you on again? Just
right.
wondering. You know.
Yeah, we'll accept those European ones that say that there could be some sort of problem. But if they say there's no problem, well, we really should look into that.
There's a new paper out now, but the most recent one, at least, there were 3 authors. The first one was a writer of raw vegan cookbooks. The second one was a Seventh-day Adventist, and the third one was a member of PCRM, which is a PETA-linked activist association. So,
what for which
side of
for the latest A&D paper? That is simply untrue. I think he's referring to the old one, because the old one, Visanto Molina, she's from Vancouver. Actually, I know her. She was the lead author of the older position statement, and she's vegan. And it's funny that he mentions raw vegan. No, she wrote like Becoming Vegan, which is kind of like a lot of people, at least for a long time in the like whole foods plant-based space, considered it like the textbook or whatever of eating plant-based. But it's the framing there is pretty wild. It's obviously trying to paint a picture, but even so, it's like, where has he at all criticized the actual arguments that were presented or the data that was presented? And to be fair, I don't think that initial position statement is the best there is. I think it is essentially like a narrative review. I think the newer one is much more rigorous, but still, he hasn't provided any like substantive argument.
Yeah, PETA linked. It's like, okay, well,
of interest.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so there's lots of concerns even on the health side that you mentioned, but do you see, there's often this talk of the blue zones where it's very highly plant-based for longer lived populations. What do you say to people who say, look, the evidence says that the heart disease is lower and people live longer and people don't have as much obesity on these vegan diets, and so why shouldn't we continue to eat fully vegan into older adulthood for our lifespan?
Yeah. So my opinion here is that we need to be careful if we come up with strong